Hey guys, welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad to have you with me. So if you've never been here before, what's up? How you doing? This is just a podcast where I read through one chapter of the Book of Mormon each episode, and I give a little bit of context, a little bit of insight, a little bit of good times. So yeah, stick around. So if you remember last episode, I read 2 Nephi chapter 17, in which there's a ton of historical context, ton of names, ton of nations, lots of war happening, lots of conflict, so it's a little bit difficult to parse, but I still think that I was able to pull some pretty good stuff from it. So go back and listen to that if you haven't already. But for this week, we're going to be reading 2 Nephi chapter 18, and as a reminder, we're going to read the chapter summary and then move on to the verses. So, without further ado, let's read 2 Nephi chapter 18. Christ will be as a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. Seek the Lord, not peeping wizards. Turn to the law and to the testimony for guidance. Compare Isaiah 8. As I say every Isaiah episode to this point, this chapter is immediately after the previous chapter in terms of Isaiah's original writings. And so again, if you want to mentally figure out a kind of common thread between all of the chapters that we're reading, go ahead, focus on that. But this chapter should be pretty cool because it talks about seeking the Lord and turning to the law and the testimony for guidance. And I will say, you cannot tell me that the term peeping wizards is not absolutely hilarious. What are the wizards doing? Oh, they're peeping. I find far too much joy just in that term. Anyways, moving on. Moreover, the word of the Lord said unto me, Take thee a great roll, and write in it with a man's pen, concerning Maher-shalal-Hashbaz. And I took unto me faithful witnesses to record, Uriah the priest, and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah. And I went unto the prophetess, and she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Lord unto me, Call his name Maher-shalal-Hashbaz. For behold, the child shall not have knowledge to cry. My father and my mother before the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away before the king of Assyria. And the Lord spake also unto me, saying, Forasmuch as these people refuse the waters of Shiloah that go softly, and rejoice in Rezin and Remaliah's son, now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth up upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria and all his glory, and he shall come up over all his channels, and go over all his banks. And he shall pass through Judah, and shall overflow, and go over, and he shall reach even to the neck, and the stretching out of his wings shall fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel. That's really cool imagery, where I feel like often with Isaiah's writings, it's difficult to get the poetry to show through the translation, because like I said, obviously he's not an English speaker, so his poetry doesn't exactly translate super well. In this case, literally translates super well. But this analogy of the people of Assyria attacking Judah being like a flood, or being like a wave that's crashing over the entire region is so interesting because it's so visual. It kind of shows the complete and utter control that Assyria had over Judah. They're just so much more dominant in terms of their military power that they could just sweep over and flood all of Judah. And I think that's really cool. That's a cool image, and it really paints a picture in your mind. Associate yourselves, O ye people, and ye shall be broken in pieces. And give ear, all ye of far countries, gird yourselves, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Gird yourselves, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Take counsel together, and it shall come to naught. Speak the word, and it shall not stand, for God is with us. For the Lord spake thus unto me with a strong hand, and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people, saying, Say ye not a confederacy, to all whom this people shall say, A confederacy, neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid. Sanctify the Lord of hosts himself, and let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. I like that term, let him be your fear, because, I think that's a little principle that we can kind of pull from this verse. God here is telling Isaiah, let God be your fear, let him be your dread. And I think that what he's referring to, again, this is the gospel according to Ellie, but I think what he's referring to is that we can give all of our fear to God, we can give all of our uncertainty to God, and just lay it at his feet and trust in him. And I've mentioned many times before, trusting in God so completely is a terrifying thing, but it's so powerful, I think. And I love the way that he phrased it, just let God be your fear. Give it all to him. Kind of shoulder off the burden onto him, And I especially like the verb there, let. You have to be the one to choose to allow him into your life and to allow him to become your fear and to take it from you and carry it himself. Let is an action word on our part. We are the ones that let him into our lives. And I don't know, that phrase is just so well said. And he shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling and for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel, for a gin and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many among them shall stumble and fall and be broken and be snared and be taken. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. And I will wait upon the Lord that hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth in Mount Zion. And when they shall say unto you, Seek unto them that have familiar spirits, and unto wizards that peep and mutter, should not a people seek unto their God for the living to hear from the dead? Again, with the wizards that peep and mutter, that is hilarious. I'm just imagining little video game style cartoony wizards where you can't even see their face because their hat is so big, and they're just rubbing their hands together and their shoulders are all hunched and they're just you know? It's, oh my goodness, this image in my head is so funny. And their eyes are just cartoonishly popping out and you can't see the rest of their face. And I know that it's talking about priestcrafts and quote unquote, magic, things that aren't of God, but man, that's just funny. To the law and to the testimony, and if they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. And they shall pass through it hardly, bestead and hungry, and it shall come to pass that when they shall be hungry, they shall fret themselves, and curse their king and their God, and look upward. And they shall look unto the earth, and be on trouble, and darkness, dimness of anguish, and shall be driven to darkness. I like how in verse 19, so even though I was making fun of the peep and mutter phrase, I like how in verse 19 it says, don't look to people with quote-unquote familiar spirits or wizards or whatever, all this pseudo-science, pseudo-religion stuff. Look to the truth. And, it's an important skill to be able to parse what is truth and what is not. It takes a lot of critical thinking and a lot of thought, but I believe that it can be arrived at. I believe that spiritual truth is something that is very powerful, and it is not found among wizards that peep and mutter. And so I think that's a very important principle that kind of the whole end of the chapter is talking about, where you find truth, you find light in places where God is. You find truth where truth is. You can't look for truth in places where it isn't, because it's just not there. That's kind of how that works. So yeah, I just think this is an important principle so that we know where we get our truth from. It is a very important thing to know how to get spiritual truth, and it is different for everybody. There are different ways of arriving at it, and we all feel revelation from the Spirit differently, but I believe that, like I said, you can arrive at spiritual truth, and it's very important to do that, because it will allow you to strengthen your foundation in Jesus Christ and make you more immovable, which is, again, eternal progress. There is no way in this life that we can be perfect and, utterly stuck in the foundation of Jesus, but we can do our best, and that's the goal of this life, right? To do our best. So, the stand-up verse for this chapter is going to be 2 Nephi 18, verse 17, and to remind you, it says, And I will wait upon the Lord that hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him. So obviously at this point Jerusalem is doing bad stuff, as has been kind of the theme for the past few chapters. Isaiah has a very bad opinion of people in Jerusalem, and from what he writes it sounds like it's pretty well justified. But I think that this part is important because it says, I will wait upon the Lord. It's just a reminder to us about the Lord's timing, and about God's timing, and about how his timing is not always our timing. And while a lot of things may not make sense right now, I genuinely do believe that if we wait, and if we trust, and if we hold on, and if we endure, then answers will come. I truly believe that. And I mentioned how Jerusalem is so wicked because in the middle of the verse it says, that hideth his face from the house of Jacob. So it sounds like God is kind of, quote-unquote, hiding his face from the house of Jacob. Because, no one around him is, quote-unquote, godly. No one around him is holy. No one around him is seeking God. But in the last end of the verse, it says, I will look for him. I've mentioned many times before how looking for God everywhere will cause you to find him everywhere. Looking for his hand in your life will give you a greater appreciation for what he does. And, I'm pretty sure it was Irene that suggested that we keep kind of a daily diary, marking how we saw God's hand in our lives that day. And I think that's a very powerful tool to help us look for him, as it says in this verse. And I don't know, this verse is just packed with so much good stuff. It talks about how it is important that we wait for the Lord, even when we're among people that God hides his face from because they're so wicked. And we can look for him, because even though maybe we're surrounded by people who don't look for him, we can. And we can find him in everything that we do. So anyways, not too long of a chapter, but a very good one nonetheless. And as usual, there are those links down in the show notes. One is just a web version of the Book of Mormon, and the other two are app downloads of the Book of Mormon. So if you do not have your own copy, I highly suggest you read along, because it is very enriching to read the Book of Mormon, and it's amazing. And in fact, one of the links down there is to Gospel Library, and the Gospel Library has the whole LDS kind of library, that's why it's called a Gospel Library, of gospel resources. And so that doesn't only have the Book of Mormon, but has all of the other canonized LDS scripture and prophets and other resources, and it's amazing. So go ahead, check that out if you don't have it. But yeah, I think that's it. I'll talk to you later. Bye.